Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 364 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where today we're doing something a little special.
Well, it's a very special day, and it's a very special podcast, and I'm excited to be here. But first, folks, pull up a bench in the common room and join us. I'm Shawn Marchese, the Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the Man of the West, Alan Sisto.
Thank you, Shawn. It is so good to have you back. Folks, it is hard to believe, and I mean this, it is literally hard to believe this, but we are celebrating our 10th annual Tolkien Reading Day special.
Wow.
Because the first one was when we were just a couple weeks old in 2016.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hard to believe, but it's a tradition as old as Bartleman's bag around here. So, 10 Tolkien Reading Days.
Almost as old as I am. Well,
and nowhere near as old as I am.
Right. Not quite, I guess. Well, folks, no matter how you arrived, you're all welcome here in the common room. At the Prancing Pony Podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Middle-earth with plenty of speculation and bad jokes along the way.
Indeed. We do love our deep dives into the lore, though, and discussing our favorite themes and a whole lot more.
But we try to keep it light and fun, like a couple of friends chatting at a pub. And we're glad you've joined us.
And while you'll be glad you joined as well, this episode is going to be a bit different. You see, every year on March 25th, the Tolkien Society organizes Tolkien Reading Day to encourage fans to celebrate and promote the life and works of J.R.R. Tolkien by reading favorite passages.
Why the 25th of March, you say? Well, we'll tell you. Because that's the date of the downfall of Sauron and the destruction of Barad-dûr.
That's right.
Now, because this episode is coming out a couple of days before March 25th, it's coming out on March 23rd, you've still got a day or two to figure out what your reading is going to be.
That's right. Now, every year, the Tolkien Society chooses a different theme to focus on. And this year's theme is fellowship and community. And really could not have been a better fit, because in keeping with this theme of fellowship and community, I have asked each of my co-hosts from the last couple of seasons to join me on this episode. We're each going to do a reading or two, have a brief discussion, and then we'll bring in the next co-host.
That's right. So, folks, you're going to get to hear readings from Don Marshall, the Nerd of the Rings, Sara Brown, and James Tauber, and even Alan Sisto, I suppose. And then I'll come back later to do my reading, taking you all the way back to the first age.
Speaking of going back in time, I am really very glad you could join me today, Shawn. It is always such a pleasure to have you back on the show, and I'm especially looking forward to your readings.
Well, thank you, my friend. It's good to be here, and I'm looking forward to it. I've chosen something that will take us back. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, folks, in keeping with our Tolkien Reading Day tradition here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, we're going to spend our time today, well, mostly reading and maybe not talking quite as much. And we want to get that reading started as soon as possible because we've got a lot of guests and a lot of passages. So we're going to get right to it. And we'll start by welcoming our first guest for this year's Tolkien Reading Day special, my current co-host who's almost finished serving his sentence. Finished his long run with me, Matt from the Nerd of the Rings. Matt, what passage have you chosen?
So I've chosen a bit of a, it's going to be a bit of an amalgamation. We're going to combine a couple things.
I like this.
Conglomeration. Yes. Yeah. We're basically, I'll just say, we're looking at the friendship of Turin and Beleg from the Children of Hurin. Yeah.
Okay.
One of my favorite first age characters, Beleg.
Beleg's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then where are we starting with this?
So we're starting kind of toward the end of the chapter of Mim the Dwarf.
Okay.
And it'll take us a little bit into Land of Bow and Helm and
maybe a little bit further than that, huh?
Maybe a little further than that. I don't even want to say the chapter name.
I was going to say Tolkien and his spoilerific chapter titles. The Death of Beleg. Thanks, Tolkien. Yeah. I appreciate knowing that's what's going to happen.
It's not even like The Departure, where, it's open-ended a little bit.
At least he was a little sneaky in Boromir.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so we're going to pick up, like you said, near the very end of chapter 7 of the Children of Hurin of Mim the Dwarf.
All right, so we're jumping in here, and the text is going to be referring to Turin and his company, his band of outlaws, if you recall in the story.
Not his merry men. These aren't his merry men.
No, not his merry men. No, not merry men. Band of outlaws. It sounds much cooler.
It does, doesn't it? All right.
But when autumn was past, the winter pressed them hard. Before Yule, snow came down from the north, heavier than they had known it in the river vales. At that time, and ever the more as the power of Angband grew, the winters worsened in Beleriand. Amon-Ruth was covered deep, and only the hardiest dared stir abroad. Some fell sick, and all were pinched with hunger. In the dim dusk of a day in midwinter, there appeared suddenly among them a man, as it seemed, of great bulk and girth, cloaked and hooded in white. He had eluded their watchmen, and he walked up to their fire without a word. When men sprang up, he laughed and threw back his hood, and they saw that it was Beleg Strongbow. Under his wide cloak he bore a great pack, in which he had brought many things for the help of men. In this way Beleg came back to Turin, yielding to his love against his wisdom. Turin was glad indeed, for he had often regretted his stubbornness, and now the desire of his heart was granted without the need to humble himself or to yield his own will. But if Turin was glad, not so was Androg, nor some others of his company. It seemed to them that there had been a tryst between Beleg and their captain, which he had kept secret from them. And Androg watched them jealously as the two sat apart in speech together. Beleg had brought with him the helm of Hador, for he hoped that it might lift Turin's thought again above his life in the wild as the leader of a petty company. "This is your own which I bring back to you," he said to Turin as he took out the helm. "It was left in my keeping on the North Marches, but it was not forgotten, I think." "Almost," said Turin, "but it shall not be so again." And he fell silent, looking far away with the eyes of his thought, until suddenly he caught the gleam of another thing that Beleg held in his hand. It was the gift of Melian, but the silver leaves were red in the firelight, and when Turin saw the seal, his eyes darkened. "What have you there?" he said. "The greatest gift that one who loves you still has to give," answered Beleg. "Here is Lembus in Elith, the waybread of the Eldar that no man has yet tasted. The helm of my fathers I take, with good will for your keeping," said Turin, "but I will not receive gifts out of Doriath." "Then send back your sword and your arms," said Beleg. "Send back also the teaching and fostering of your youth. And let your men, who you say have been faithful, die in the desert to please your mood. Nonetheless, this waybread was a gift not to you, but to me, and I may do with it as I will. Eat it not if it sticks in your throat, but others may be more hungry and less proud." Turin's eyes glinted, but as he looked in Beleg's face, the fire in them died, and they went gray, and he said in a voice hardly to be heard, "I wonder, friend, that you deign to come back to such a churl. From you I will take whatever you give, even rebuke. Henceforward you shall counsel me in all ways, save the road to Doriath only." And then we're going to continue for one more paragraph into the next chapter, The Land of Bow and Helm. In the days that followed, Beleg labored much for the good of the company. Those that were hurt or sick he tended, and they were quickly healed. For in those days the Grey Elves were still a high people, possessing great power, and they were wise in the ways of life and of all living things. And though they were less in crafts and lore than the exiles from Valinor, they had many arts beyond the reach of men. Moreover, Beleg the Archer was great among the people of Doriath. He was strong and enduring, and far-sighted in mind as well as eye. And at need he was valiant in battle, relying not only upon the swift arrows of his long bow, but also upon his great sword, Anglakel. And ever the more did hatred grow in the heart of Mim, who hated all elves, as has been told, and who looked with a jealous eye on the love that Turin bore to Beleg. So then I'm gonna skip a bunch here, but long story short, Mim's jealousy gets the best of him.
Oh, yeah.
That's putting it lightly. He
Can we
betrays.
just say the joke? Meme is really petty.
Yes, he is very petty. He's the pettiest of dwarves.
Yes, he is. I get it, though, in fairness. I mean, I'm not actually... Poor guy. Meme's had a rough life.
His son got killed. Yeah.
And he's been hunted by the elves.
Yeah, he's been hunted by the elves previously, his people.
He's the last of his kind. Yeah, it's terrible. It's a terrible spot to be in.
It's kind of rough. Yeah.
I'd be in a bad mood, too, in fairness.
Right.
By the way, before we move on to your reading, I just thought I would comment real briefly. I loved the last bit of the chapter of Meme the Dwarf when you said, "I wonder, friend, that you deign to come back to such a churl."
Yeah.
It made me think of how you come back to this show every year.
Oh, man. Wow.
But I'm not going to let you counsel me in any really significant ways. All right. That's done. Let's pick up there after Meme's betrayal.
All right. Turin and Beleg retreated into the cave and rolled a great stone across the passage. In these straits, Androg revealed to them the hidden stair leading to the flat summit of Amon Ruth, which he had found when lost in the caves, as has been told. Then Turin and Beleg with many of their men went up by this stair and came out on the summit, surprising those few of the orcs who had already come there by the outer path, and driving them over the edge. For a little while they held off the orcs climbing up the rock, but they had no shelter on the bare summit, and many were shot from below. Most valiant of these was Androg, who fell mortally wounded by an arrow at the head of the outside stair. Then Turin and Beleg, with the 10 men left to them, drew back to the center of the summit, where there was a standing stone, and making a ring about it, they defended themselves until all were slain, save Beleg and Turin. For over them the orcs cast nets. Turin was bound and carried off. Beleg, who was wounded, was bound likewise, but was laid on the ground with wrists and ankles tied to iron pins driven into the rock. Now the orcs, finding the issue of the secret stair, left the summit and entered Barad-dûr, which they defiled and ravaged. They did not find Mim lurking in his caves, and when they had departed from Amon Ruth, Mim appeared on the summit, and going to where Beleg lay prostrate and unmoving, he gloated over him while he sharpened a knife. But Mim and Beleg were not the only living beings on that stony height. Androg, though himself wounded to the death, crawled among the dead bodies towards them, and seizing a sword, he thrust it at the dwarf. Shrieking in fear, Mim ran to the brink of the cliff and disappeared. He fled down a steep and difficult goat's path that was known to him. But Androg, putting forth his last strength, cut through the wristbands and fetters that bound Beleg, and so released him. But dying, he said, "My hurts are too deep, even for your healing." And then we're going to continue on to the next chapter, which I'm not even going to say the title of the chapter, guys. It's chapter 9.
These spoilerific titles, I know.
Beleg sought among the dead for Turin to bury him, but he did not discover his body. He knew then that Hurin's son was still alive and taken to Angband. But he remained perforce in Barad-dûr until his wounds were healed. He set out then with little hope to try to find the trail of the orcs, and he came upon their tracks near the crossings of Teglin. There they divided, some passing along the eaves of the forest of Brethil toward the ford of Brithiach, while others turned away westwards, and it seemed plain to Beleg that he must follow those that went direct with greatest speed to Angband, making for the pass of Anach. Therefore he journeyed through Dimbar, and up to the pass of Anach in Ered Gorgoroth, the mountains of terror, and so to the highlands of Tarnufuin, the forest under night, a region of dread and dark enchantment, of wandering and despair. Benighted in that evil land, it chanced that Beleg saw a small light among the trees, and going towards it he found an elf, lying asleep beneath a great dead tree. Beside his head was a lamp, from which the covering had slipped off. Then Beleg woke the sleeper and gave him lembas, and asked him what fate had brought him to this terrible place, and he named himself Gwyndor, son of Gwilyn. Grieving Beleg looked at him, for Gwyndor was but a bent and timid shadow of his former shape and mood, when in the battle of unnumbered tears, that lord of Nargothrond rode to the very doors of Angband, and there was taken. For few of the Noldor whom Morgoth took captive were put to death, because of their skill in mining for metals and gems, and Gwyndor was not slain, but put to labor in the mines of the north. These Noldor possessed many of the Feanorian lamps, which were crystals hung in a fine chain net, the crystals being ever shining with an inner blue radiance, marvelous for finding the way in the darkness of night or in tunnels. Of these lamps they themselves did not know the secret. Many of the mining elves thus escaped from the darkness of the mines, for they were able to bore their way out. But Gwyndor received a small sword from one who worked in the forges, and when working in a stone gang turned suddenly on the guards. He escaped, but with one hand cut off, and now he lay exhausted under the great pines of Tar Nufuin. From Gwyndor, Beleg learned that the small company of orcs ahead of them, from whom he had hidden, had no captives, and were going with speed. An advanced guard, perhaps, bearing report to Angband. At this news, Beleg despaired, for he guessed that the tracks he had seen turning away westwards after the crossings of Teglin were those of a greater host, who had in orc fashion gone marauding in the lands seeking food and plunder, and might now be returning to Angband by way of the narrow land, the long defile of Sirion much further to the west. If this were so, his sole hope lay in returning to the ford of Brithiach, and then going north to Tol Sirion. But scarcely had he determined on this than they heard a noise of a great host approaching through the forest from the south. And hiding in the boughs of a tree, they watched the servants of Morgoth pass, moving slowly, laden with booty and captives, surrounded by wolves. And they saw Turin with chained hands being driven on with whips. Then Beleg told him of his own errand in Tar Nufuin, and Gwyndor sought to dissuade him from his quest, saying that he would but join Turin in the anguish that awaited him. But Beleg would not abandon Turin, and despairing himself, he aroused hope again in Gwyndor's heart, and together they went on, following the orcs until they came out of the forest on the high slopes that ran down to the barren dunes of the Anfauglith. There within sight of the peaks of Thangorodrim, the orcs made their encampment in a bare dale, and set wolf sentinels all about its rim. There they fell to carousing and feasting on their booty, and after tormenting their prisoners, most fell drunkenly asleep. By that time day was failing, and it became very dark. A great storm rode up out of the west, and thunder rumbled far off as Beleg and Gwyndor crept towards the camp. When all in the camp were sleeping, Beleg took up his bow and in the darkness shot 4 of the wolf sentinels on the south side, one by one and silently. Then in great peril they entered in, and they found Turin fettered hand and foot and tied to a tree. All about, knives that had been cast at him by his tormentors were embedded in the trunk, but he was not hurt, and he was senseless in a drug stupor, or swooned in a sleep of utter weariness. Then Beleg and Gwyndor cut the bonds from the tree, and bore Turin out of the camp, but he was too heavy to carry far, and they could go no further than to a thicket of thorn trees high on the slopes above the camp. There they laid him down, and now the storm drew nearer, and lightning flashed on Thangorodrim. Beleg drew his sword Anglakel, and with it cut the fetters that bound Turin.
I love the way you just ended that.
Yeah, I think we'll just stop there.
That's
and
where
then
the
they
story
lived
ends
happily ever
forever.
after.
That's right.
Yes.
I like that retcon. We're changing the story. Yay, Beleg, who lived long into his old age to celebrate stories of his heroism.
He lived so long that he grew a beard just like Círdan.
I love it. I love it. That's a really interesting choice of passage to talk about fellowship and community. I like it.
Yeah, I love Children of Húrin.
Like, it is such a good.
It's so good, and
good's a hard word. It's high quality. Yes, it's terrifyingly,
insanely
dark.
high quality.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those. I usually recommend to people to read it after Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
like even before reading Silmarillion, because it's a complete narrative, you know.
Oh yeah, because the Silmarillion will essentially spoil the whole story in just a few pages, as opposed to letting you enjoy the whole thing.
The journey of reading this book is worth reading it before getting a very Cliff Notes version.
That's similar. I actually advise people to read the Silmarillion, but I actually advise them to skip the chapter of Turin and the chapter on Beren.
That would work too,
so that they can get those in the full Great Tales. Yeah.
Beleg's always been one of my favorite. Like, he's usually my answer when people ask me who my favorite Middle-earth character is. I cheat and I give one for each age of the world. And so my first age answer is usually Beleg, unless I'm feeling spicy and I go with Glaurung because he's such a great villain, who also shows up in this book. Another reason why this book is so freaking good.
Hail, Nienor, daughter of Húrin.
Daughter of Húrin. Yeah. So
man, he's such a. Anyway, it's times. This year's theme is not the villains. This year's theme is fellowship and community.
Yeah, it's not malice and contempt. Yeah,
and I think you've got a really good choice here. I mean, we see a lot of the community aspect of it is really in the time where Beleg is there to help Turin's men, to help all of them.
Yeah, and he's. You know, and that's why I started where I did, you know, kind of setting the stage for, it's easy to forget, like, they're in kind of rough shape, you know, they're sick and injured and everything. And Beleg comes in and it says, like, he is an amazing, he is a godsend to these people. And and you get such great dynamics of, like, the friendship between Beleg and Turin. You know, Turin is a stubborn guy.
He is. Yeah, you can
and
tell.
He acknowledges it, which is pretty rare in this tale.
That's true. That may be like his most humble moment right there.
It is. Yeah. I think it's because of Beleg and because of the relationship that they have and the love he has for Beleg.
He really does.
Because every other point where he should show some humility, he doesn't.
Turin does not. Yes. Dear reader, he did not. Yeah.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Fantastic choice.
But yeah, and like, you know, we've obviously talked around it, but Beleg has quite the tragic end, and it just makes it heartbreaking because this guy is such a loyal and caring friend that, you know, he goes out into the wilderness and is among people, you know, like Endrog is not a fan. Mim is not a fan. Like
Mim's not a fan. No.
Yeah. Like he's relatively hostile
Mim's
environment
about to kill him, going into, right? I mean, that's the thing. He's bound in fetters on the top of the hill.
Yeah, that was part of the arrangement.
That was the deal. Like, you can have my place and kill these men, but I get to kill Beleg. You know, that's just so. Yeah, not a fan is one way to describe it.
But out of love of Turin,
yes,
he goes out into the wilderness. If you're wondering, is it more comfortable to live in Menegroth or
on the top of Amon Ruth?
And Amon Ruth, like this dwarf delving, a petty dwarf delving. We're not talking like grand.
This is not the 21st Hall in Khazad-dûm.
Yes. Yeah. This is
a tunnel, a cave with bare and sandy walls with no chair to sit down on and no pantries like a hobbit hole. No, this is probably the ends of worms and things like that. You know that.
Yes, oozy smell.
Oozy smell. I also like that we see even briefly a second little fellowship form between Beleg and Gwyndor. And, you know, Gwyndor says you probably shouldn't do this, but then he still goes with him anyway to help.
Right.
And then Beleg's just like, I can't.
And like like Beleg kind of like rubs off a little bit, like in this very brief time. Like it's not long.
Yeah. I mean, you think later in the story of Gwyndor and Turin, and Gwyndor takes on a role that's very Beleg-like in Turin's life. And
Yeah.
Until he doesn't.
Right.
So, yeah, really, really good choice of passage, Matt. I like that. I like some of these deeper cuts, and I hope that some folks will go and read The Children of Hurin who haven't. So,
I hope so.
yeah.
I cannot recommend it enough. I tell anyone who will listen, like, don't sleep on Children of Hurin. You know,
No.
a lot of times it kind of gets like thrown in the mix of, you know, oh, well, that's the deeper cut stuff. You know, when you talk about people reading the Silmarillion and History of Middle Earth volumes, Beren and Luthien, Fall of Gondolin, which are both,
the other great
you know,
tales.
various, they're multiple versions of the same tale or unfinished tales where it's like chunks of stories. Some of them contradict each other. Like, this is a full cover to cover single narrative. Like, there's no, it's not.
Christopher did a fantastic job.
He did a marvelous job.
Really did.
And like, I often point to this and say, like I understand why he didn't, but I would have been okay if Christopher would have decided to
finish the Fall of Gondolin.
Yeah, finish Fall of Gondolin, Beren and Luthien, and like really like make them cover to cover narratives,
novelize them. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
that would have been.
I think he would have done a fantastic job because this is one of my favorite books.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's fantastic. Well, Matt, thank you for joining us for this year's Tolkien Reading Day special. It's been a privilege to spend all this time in Rohan with you this season.
Yeah.
I hope you'll be back next year for some more time with me in Unfinished Tales. And 2 years from now, when I do the Great Tales, I think it's pretty clear you need to come back to Children of Hurin.
I would be interested in. Yes, sir.
All right.
I've listened to the Christopher Lee audiobook. For those of you who are interested in audiobooks, you cannot do any better than Christopher Lee narrating The Children of Hurin. It is a game changer.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Out of all the Tolkien audiobooks, it is one of my favorites as well.
I think it might be my favorite. And no disrespect to Rob Inglis or Andy Serkis or the Wests or anybody, but like Christopher Lee, like, I mean, we know from the behind the scenes stuff that Christopher Lee had a huge passion for these.
He did.
And his grand voice
is
and like that rich voice it is so perfect for an older tale. Like, you feel like it's being passed down from on high kind of thing. It's so good.
It is good stuff. All right, Matt. Thanks again, man. Now, soon we'll get back to more passages celebrating fellowship and community, but before we do, we want to remind you there is a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony Podcast, thankfully, than just us.
That's right. The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and great discussions across all of our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast. Follow the page to get the news and the episode drops, but you're going to want to join the group to get in some great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/prancingponypod. On Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitch, and YouTube, we're simply at Prancing Pony Pod.
That's right. And if you want daily Tolkien content, check out Today's Tolkien Times on the PPP YouTube channel and on all your favorite podcast apps. That's my short format daily show with everything from Middle-earth Map Monday to Silmarillion Saturday. And then there's my new twice weekly streaming of all fun things Middle-earth on the PPP Plays. Be sure to check both of them out on the YouTube channel for all the PPP productions at youtube.com/@prancingponypod. Well, now we're going to take a quick step back in time to earlier this season as we welcome back Don Marshall, the obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy, though I'm still trying to figure out if he's claiming to be obscure or if it's just the facts that are obscure. Don, I'd ask what you've chosen to read for us today, but I think I still want to know, is it just the facts that are obscure, or is the Lord of the Rings obscure? That I have a hard time buying.
I don't think the Lord of the Rings themselves are obscure, though I was told by a friend of mine on the day that TikTok was quote unquote ending, that most of my facts aren't actually that obscure. So I feel as though I need to step it up a little bit.
Most everybody knows this, but not everybody. And so I'm going to tell you, facts guy just doesn't have the same ring to it, though.
No, I suppose it doesn't.
A little bit of a mouthful. Yeah.
Just a bit.
So what have you chosen to read for us today?
Today, I have chosen Bath Time.
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. It felt the most appropriate given that it is
does,
one
actually.
of the last sort of lighthearted moments, truly, before everything sort of gets much, much darker.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
So much darker.
It does indeed. Well, I will, with no further ado, since it is Tolkien Reading Day and not Alan and Don Talking Day, I'm going to let you go ahead and read.
The travelers hung up their cloaks and piled their packs on the floor. Merry led them down the passage and threw open a door at the far end. Firelight came out, and a puff of steam. "A bath!" cried Pippin. "Oh, blessed Meriadoc!" "Which order shall we go in?" said Frodo. "Eldest first, or quickest first? You'll be last either way, Master Peregrine." "Trust me to arrange things better than that," said Merry. "We can't begin life at Crick Hollow with a quarrel over baths. In that room there are 3 tubs, and a copper full of boiling water. There are also towels, mats, and soap. Get inside and be quick." Merry and Fatty went into the kitchen on the other side of the passage and busied themselves with the final preparations for a late supper. Snatches of competing songs came from the bathroom, mixed with the sound of splashing and wallowing. The voice of Pippin was suddenly lifted up above the others in one of Bilbo's favorite bath songs. "Sing, hey, for the bath at the close of day, that washes the weary mud away. A loon is he that will not sing. Oh, hot water is a noble thing. Oh, sweet is the sound of falling rain, and the brook that leaps from hill to plain. But better than rain or rippling stream is water hot that smokes and steams. Oh, water cold we may pour at need, down a thirsty throat, and be glad indeed. But better is beer if drink we lack, and water hot poured down our back. Oh, water is fair that leaps on high, in a fountain white beneath the sky. But never did fountain sound so sweet as splashing hot water at my feet."
Oh, I know that we shouldn't interrupt the reading, but I have to say, Tolkien Singing Day is going exceptionally well. Thank you, Don. That was fantastic.
It is my absolute pleasure and intense embarrassment to do that in front of just you. I can only imagine what's going to happen on the playback. We carry on.
We do indeed.
There was a terrific splash and a shout of "Whoa!" from Frodo. It appeared that a lot of Pippin's bath had imitated a fountain and leaped on high. Merry went to the door. "What about supper and beer in the throat?" he called, and Frodo came out drying his hair. "There's so much water in the air that I'm coming into the kitchen to finish," he said. "Locks," said Merry, looking in. The stone floor was swimming. "You ought to mop all that up before you get anything to eat, Peregrine," he said. "Hurry up, or we shan't wait for you." They had supper in a kitchen on the table near the fire. "I suppose you 3 won't want mushrooms again," said Fredegar, without much hope. "Yes, we shall," cried Pippin. "They're mine," said Frodo. "Given to me by Mrs. Maggot, a queen among farmers' wives. Take your greedy hands away, and I'll serve them." Hobbits have a passion for mushrooms, surpassing even the greediest likings of big people. A fact which partly explains young Frodo's long expeditions to the renowned fields of the Marish and the wrath of the injured Maggot. On the occasion, there was plenty for all, even according to Hobbit standards. There were also many other things to follow, and when they had finished, even Fatty Bulger heaved a sigh of content. They pushed back the table and drew chairs round the fire. "We'll clear up later," said Merry. "Now tell me all about it. I guess that you have been having adventures, which was not quite fair without me. I want a full account, and most of all, I want to know what was the matter with old Maggot, and why he spoke to me like that. He sounded almost as if he was scared, if that was possible." "We have all been scared," said Pippin after a pause, in which Frodo stared at the fire and did not speak. "You would have been too, if you had been chased for 2 days by black riders." "But what are they?" "Black figures riding on black horses," answered Pippin. "If Frodo won't talk, I will tell you the whole tale from the beginning." He then gave a full account of their journey from the time when they left Hobbiton. Sam gave various supporting nods and exclamations. Frodo remained silent. "I should think that you were making it all up," said Merry, "if I had not seen that black shape on the landing stage, and heard the queer sound in Maggot's voice. What do you make of it all, Frodo?" "Cousin Frodo," has been very close, said Pippin, but the time has come for him to open out. So far, we have been given nothing more to go on than Farmer Maggot's guess that it has something to do with old Bilbo's treasure. That was only a guess, said Frodo hastily. Maggot does not know anything. Old Maggot is a shrew fellow, said Merry. A lot goes on behind his round face that does not come out in his talk. I've heard that he used to go into the old forest at one time, and he had the reputation of knowing a good many strange things. But you can at least tell us, Frodo, whether you think his guess good or bad. I think, answered Frodo slowly, that it was a good guess, as far as it goes. There is a connection with Bilbo's old adventures, and the writers are looking, or perhaps one ought to say, searching for him or for me. I also fear, if you want to know, that it is no joke at all, and that I am not safe here or anywhere else. He looked round at the windows and walls as if he was afraid they would suddenly give way. The others looked at him in silence and exchanged meaningful glances among themselves. "It's coming out in a minute," whispered Pippin to Merry. Merry nodded. "Well," said Frodo at last, sitting up and straightening his back as if he had made a decision, "I can't keep it dark any longer. I've got something to tell you all, but I don't know quite how to begin." "I think I could help you," said Merry quietly, "by telling you some of it myself." "What do you mean?" said Frodo, looking at him anxiously. "Just this, my dear old Frodo. You are miserable because you don't know how to say goodbye. You meant to leave the Shire, of course, but danger has come on you sooner than expected, and now you are making up your mind to go at once, and you don't want to. We are very sorry for you." Frodo opened his mouth and shut it again. The look of surprise was so comical that they laughed. "Dear old Frodo," said Pippin, "did you really think that you had thrown dust in all our eyes? You have not been nearly careful or clever enough for that. You have obviously been planning to go and saying farewell to all your haunts all this year since April. We have constantly heard you muttering, 'Shall I ever look down into that valley again, I wonder?' and things like that, and pretending that you had come to the end of your money, and actually selling your beloved Bag-End to those Sackville Bagginses, and all those close talks with Gandalf." "Good heavens," said Frodo. "I thought I had been both careful and clever. I don't know what Gandalf would say. Is all the Shire discussing my departure, then?" "Oh, no," said Merry. "Don't worry about that. The secret won't keep for long, of course, but at present it is. I think only known to us conspirators. After all, you must remember that we know you well, and are often with you. We can usually guess what you're thinking. I knew Bilbo, too. To tell the truth, I've been watching you rather closely ever since he left. I thought that you would go after him sooner or later. Indeed, I expected you to go sooner. And lately, we have been very anxious. We have been terrified that you might give us the slip and go off suddenly, all on your own, like he did. Ever since this spring, we have kept our eyes open and done a good deal of planning on our own account. You are not going to escape so easily." "But I must go," said Frodo. "It cannot be helped, dear friends. It is wretched for us all, but it is no use your trying to keep me. Since you have guessed so much, please help me and do not hinder me." "You do not understand," said Pippin. "You must go, and therefore we must too. Merry and I are coming with you. Sam is an excellent fellow, and would jump down a dragon's throat to save you, if he did not trip over his own feet. But you will need more than one companion on your dangerous adventure." "My dear and most beloved hobbits," said Frodo, deeply moved. "But I could not allow it. I decided that long ago, too. You speak of danger, but you do not understand. This is no treasure hunt, no there-and-back journey. I am flying from deadly peril into deadly peril." "Of course we understand," said Merry firmly. "This is why we have decided to come. We know the ring is no laughing matter, but we are going to do our best to help you against the enemy."
Oh, man, that is great stuff, isn't it?
I love it. That's one of my favorite passages, and not just because of the bath song.
Thank you for singing that, by the way. That was
fantastic. My pleasure. I can only apologize to your listeners, who I assume are still cringing a little bit.
Well, if they're still listening, I'll take that. So long as I haven't tuned out completely. Don't worry, folks. I will not be singing today. That was just a great choice. I mean, in terms of fellowship and community, this is such a shining example of fellowship.
It is, and it's one of those things that keeps coming back over and over again, is that the hobbits truly have no idea what they're getting themselves into. Merry, Sam, and Pippin are just, of course we're coming. You're in danger. Right. We don't know what it is, and we don't care. And that, to me, is just like so heartwarming.
You must go, and therefore we must too. It's just a given. Like, you have to do this, so we have to do it with you.
Yeah, it almost, not to bring it back, as I so often do, to World War I, but it was almost a going over the trenches kind of thing. Well, one of us has to go. I have to go. I'm in charge. Well, fine. We're going to. We must. We're all going with you. And it is, at that point, obviously, the other three have no idea what they're signing up for.
And even Frodo's making it clear, look, this is not Bilbo's treasure hunt.
No.
This is not, let's go on an adventure and come back. I'm going into deadly peril. This is something beyond what you're considering. And it's funny, Merry just like, yep, we know the ring isn't a laughing matter. The ring? What do you mean the ring?
How do you know about that? And this is before they truly even know the true depth of the evil of the ring. It hasn't even been described or explained. Like, we haven't had the Council of Elrond chapter yet.
And in fact, this does a really good job of sort of preceding that, right? I mean, we'll see, and I'm not trying to give spoilers because it may or may not have also been chosen as a reading for somebody else. But, that section in the Council of Elrond where once again, they insist on going. And this is just such a lovely Hobbit trait, this idea of fellowship and under whatever circumstances, however difficult.
Yeah, it's the camaraderie and the brotherhood that really, I think, comes through in an incredible way to, I don't know, really grasp. Tolkien's got an incredible grasp of brotherhood and camaraderie and staying true to each other.
Yes,
almost to a fault, right? I would not fault Samwise Gamgee, Merry, or Pippin for staying behind, saying, "Hey, that Black Rider that's after you? Not my problem right now." And Frediger Bolger is a.
I was going to say Frediger's a very good example of that. And yet he still does his part. I mean, his role in staying at Crick Hollow. And then sort of sounding the alarm is absolutely critical to them. So,
all have their roles to play.
Yep. And yet it's all set up by the lighthearted fun, the mushrooms and the bath and the song. Yeah. And it's just a reminder of what the hobbits are doing this for. This is not.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it is fantastic because it's about their friendship, first and foremost, but it's a reminder of what that friendship is based on. It's just, there's so much connection here. And I love the bath song. It's so much fun.
It does juxtapose quite nicely with, let's sing a song about getting all clean versus the death and destruction just outside our window.
That's right. It's very hobbity though, really.
Yes, it is.
They're dowdy at bay and tough to kill. And, they're also just always ready with a joke.
Yeah.
And that's certainly the case here. It's just a fantastic passage, and I wanted to thank you. It's a really good one. I'm glad that you were able to come back, by the way.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you for having
joining
me.
us on this Tolkien Reading Day. It's always great to have you here. I'm certainly enjoyed our time in Numenor, Arnor, and Gondor earlier this season, and I hope to see you back next season as well.
Hopefully there are just as many names that are unpronounceable that you will give to somebody else.
Oh, trust me. Just have a chat with Nerd of the Rings. He'll tell you I've made him do some very difficult things. Yes.
Oh, I've been listening. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I can listen for the cuts of, did they mess that name up? Did they mess that name up?
The 7th take? The 8th take? Yeah.
I think I got up to 9 at one point, but I try not to think too much about it. There were a few, but it's all good.
It was indeed. Well, thank you again, Don. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan.
Well, and now, folks, I am pleased to be joined by my friend and co-host of the Rings of Power wrap-up, the Sage of the South himself, James Tauber. James, you're going to be joining me later this season. I'm super excited, June and July, I think, to cover all those fun little niggling details in the Tale of Years, the appendices on calendars, writing, and languages, all of that fun stuff. Cannot wait for the deep dives. But today, it's a whole nother ballgame. What have you chosen to read for us today?
So I'm going to read the beginning of The Ring Goes South, Chapter 3 of Book 2.
Oh, that's going to be good. I'm already imagining some of the things in that passage. This has been so much fun to look at what everybody's choosing for this. But since this is not the Alan and James talking show, I'm going to go ahead and let you get away with some Tolkien reading.
Later that day, the hobbits held a meeting of their own in Bilbo's room. Merry and Pippin were indignant when they heard that Sam had crept into the council and had been chosen as Frodo's companion. "It's most unfair," said Pippin. "Instead of throwing him out and clapping him in chains, Elrond goes and rewards him for his cheek." "Rewards?" said Frodo. "I can't imagine a more severe punishment. You're not thinking what you're saying. Condemned to go on this hopeless journey, a reward? Yesterday I dreamed that my task was done, and I could rest here a long while, perhaps for good." "I don't wonder," said Merry, "and wish you could. But we're envying Sam, not you. If you have to go, then it will be a punishment for any of us to be left behind, even in Rivendell. We've come a long way with you and have been through some stiff times. We want to go on." "That's what I meant," said Pippin. "We hobbits ought to stick together, and we will. I shall go, unless they chain me up. There must be someone with intelligence in the party."
"Then you certainly will not be chosen, Peregrine Took," said Gandalf, looking in through the window, which was near the ground. "But you are all worrying yourselves unnecessarily. Nothing is decided yet."
"Nothing decided?" cried Pippin. "Then what were you all doing? You were shut up for hours."
"Talking," said Bilbo. "There was a deal of talk, and everyone had an eye-opener, even old Gandalf. I think Legolas's bit of news about Gollum even caught him on the hop, though he passed it off."
"You were wrong," said Gandalf. "You were inattentive. I had already heard of it from Gwaihir. If you want to know, the only real eye-openers, as you put it, were you and Frodo, and I was the only one that was not surprised."
"Well, anyway," said Bilbo, "nothing was decided beyond choosing poor Frodo and Sam. I was afraid all the time that it might come to that, if I was let off. But if you ask me, Elrond will send out a fair number when the reports come in. Have they started yet, Gandalf?"
"Yes," said the wizard. "Some of the scouts have been sent out already. More will go tomorrow. Elrond is sending elves, and they will get in touch with the rangers, and maybe with Thranduil's folk in Mirkwood. And Aragorn has gone with Elrond's sons. We shall have to scour the lands all round for many long leagues before any move is made. So cheer up, Frodo. You will probably make quite a long stay here."
"Ah," said Sam gloomily. "We'll just wait long enough for winter to come."
"That can't be helped," said Bilbo. "It's your fault partly, Frodo, my lad, insisting on waiting for my birthday. A funny way of honouring it, I can't help thinking. Not the day I should have chosen for letting the SBs into Bag End. But there it is. You can't wait now till spring, and you can't go till the reports come back. When winter first begins to bite and stones crack in the frosty night, when pools are black and trees are bare, 'tis evil in the wild to fare. But that, I'm afraid, will be just your luck."
"I'm afraid it will," said Gandalf. "We can't start until we've found out about the riders."
"I thought they were all destroyed in the flood," said Merry.
"You cannot destroy Ringwraiths like that," said Gandalf. "The power of their master is in them, and they stand or fall by him. We hope that they were all unhorsed and unmasked, and so made for a while less dangerous, but we must find out for certain. In the meantime, you should try and forget your troubles, Frodo. I do not know if I can do anything to help you, but I will whisper this in your ears. Someone said that intelligence would be needed in the party. He was right. I think I shall come with you."
So great was Frodo's delight at this announcement that Gandalf left the windowsill where he'd been sitting and took off his hat and bowed.
"I only said I think I shall come. Do not count on anything yet. In this matter, Elrond will have much to say, and your friend the Strider. Which reminds me, I want to see Elrond. I must be off."
"How long do you think I shall have here?" said Frodo to Bilbo when Gandalf had gone.
"Oh, I don't know. I can't count days in Rivendell," said Bilbo, "but quite long, I should think. We can have many a good talk. What about helping me with my book and making a start on the next? Have you thought of an ending?"
"Yes, several. and all are dark and unpleasant," said Frodo. "Oh, that won't do," said Bilbo. "Books ought to have good endings. How would this do? And they all settled down and lived together happily ever after." "It will do well if it ever comes to that," said Frodo. "Ah," said Sam, "and where will they live? That's what I often wonder." For a while the hobbits continued to talk and think of the past journey and of the perils that lay ahead. But such was the virtue of the land of Rivendell that soon all fear and anxiety was lifted from their minds. The future, good or ill, was not forgotten, but ceased to have any power over the present. Health and hope grew strong in them, and they were content with each good day as it came, taking pleasure in every meal and in every word and song. So the days slipped away as each morning dawned bright and fair, and each evening followed cool and clear. But autumn was waning fast. Slowly the golden light faded to pale silver, and the lingering leaves fell from the naked trees. A wind began to blow chill from the misty mountains to the east. The hunter's moon waxed round in the night sky and put to flight all the lesser stars. But low in the south, one star shone red. Every night, as the moon waned again, it shone brighter and brighter. Frodo could see it from his window, deep in the heavens, burning like a watchful eye that glared above the trees on the brink of the valley. The hobbits had been nearly 2 months in the House of Elrond, and November had gone by with the last shreds of autumn, and December was passing, when the scouts began to return. Some had gone north beyond the springs of the Horwell into the Ettenmoors, and others had gone west, and with the help of Aragorn and the rangers had searched the lands far down the Grey Flood, as far as Tharbad, where the old North Road crossed the river by a ruined town. Many had gone east and south, and some of these had crossed the mountains and entered Mirkwood, while others had climbed the pass at the sources of the Gladden River and had come down into Wilderland and over the Gladden Fields, and so at length had reached the old home of Radagast at Hroskabel. Radagast was not there, and they had returned over the high pass that was called the Red Horn Gate. The sons of Elrond, El-Ladan and Elrohir were the last to return. They had made a great journey, passing down the Silver Lode into a strange country, but of their errand they would not speak to any save to Elrond. In no region had the messengers discovered any signs or tidings of the riders or other servants of the enemy. Even from the eagles of the misty mountains they had learned no fresh news. Nothing had been seen or heard of Gollum, but the wild wolves were still gathering and were hunting again far up the great river. 3 of the black horses had been found at once drowned in the flooded ford. On the rocks of the rapids below, searchers discovered the bodies of 5 more, and also a long black cloak slashed and tattered. Of the black riders no other trace was to be seen, and nowhere was their presence to be felt. It seemed that they had vanished from the north.
8 out of the 9 are accounted for, at least, said Gandalf. It is rash to be too sure, yet I think that we may hope now that the Ringwraiths were scattered, and have been obliged to return as best they could to their master in Mordor, empty and shapeless. If that is so, it will be some time before they can begin the hunt again. Of course the enemy has other servants, but they will have to journey all the way to the borders of Rivendell before they can pick up our trail. And if we are careful, that will be hard to find. But we must delay no longer.
Elrond summoned the hobbits to him. He looked gravely at Frodo.
"The time has come," he said. "If the ring is to set out, it must go soon. But those who go with it must not count on their errand being aided by war or force. They must pass into the domain of the enemy far from aid. Do you still hold to your word, Frodo, that you will be the ring-bearer?"
"I do," said Frodo. "I will go with Sam."
"Then I cannot help you much, not even with counsel," said Elrond. "I can foresee very little of your road, and how your task is to be achieved I do not know. The shadow has crept now to the feet of the mountains, and draws nigh even to the borders of the grey flood, and under the shadow all is dark to me. You will meet many foes, some open and some disguised, and you may find friends upon your way when you least look for it. I will send out messages, such as I can contrive, to those whom I know in the wide world. But so perilous are the lands now become that some may well miscarry, or come no quicker than you yourself. And I will choose you companions to go with you, as far as they will or fortune allows. The number must be few, since your hope is in speed and secrecy. Had I a host of elves in armour of the elder days, it would avail little, save to arouse the power of Mordor. The company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. With you and your faithful servant, Gandalf will go, for this shall be his great task, and may be the end of his labours. For the rest, they shall represent the other free peoples of the world, elves, dwarves, and men. Legolas shall be for the elves, and Gimli, son of Glóin, for the dwarves. They are willing to go at least to the passes of the mountains, and maybe beyond. For men, you shall have Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the ring of Isildur concerns him closely. "Strider!" cried Frodo. "Yes," he said with a smile. "I ask leave once again to be your companion, Frodo." "I would have begged you to come," said Frodo. "Only I thought you were going to Minas Tirith with Boromir." "I am," said Aragorn, "and the sword that was broken shall be reforged ere I set out to war. But your road and our road lie together for many hundreds of miles. Therefore Boromir will also be in the company. He's a valiant man." "There remain 2 more to be found," said Elrond. "These I will consider. Of my household I may find some that it seems good to me to send." "But that will leave no place for us," cried Pippin in dismay. "We don't want to be left behind. We want to go with Frodo." "That is because you do not understand and cannot imagine what lies ahead," said Elrond. "Neither does Frodo," said Gandalf, unexpectedly supporting Pippin. "Nor do any of us see clearly. It is true that if these hobbits understood the danger, they would not dare to go. But they would still wish to go, or wish that they dared, and be shamed and unhappy. I think, Elrond, that in this matter it would be well to trust rather to their friendship than to great wisdom. Even if you chose for us an elf lord, such as Glorfindel, he could not storm the Dark Tower, nor open the road to the fire by the power that is in him." "You speak gravely," said Elrond, "but I am in doubt. The Shire, I forebode, is not free now from peril, and these 2 I had thought to send back there as messengers, to do what they could, according to the fashion of their country, to warn the people of their danger. In any case, I judge that the younger of these 2, Peregrine Took, should remain. My heart is against his going." "Then, Master Elrond, you will have to lock me in prison or send me home tied in a sack," said Pippin, "for otherwise I shall follow the company." "Let it be so, then. You shall go," said Elrond, and he sighed. "Now the tale of 9 is filled. In 7 days, the company must depart."
That was beautiful, James. Thank you. That was a fantastic reading. I love the heart in this. I mean, there's so much in terms of the love that the hobbits have for each other.
Exactly. And I it's really interesting the way Gandalf puts it when he says, it's true that if the hobbits understood the danger, they would not dare to go, but they would still wish to go.
Yes.
Or wish that they dared.
Yeah. Like, I want to be able to go. I want to go. Yeah.
Exactly. And then he goes on to say that amazing line about, in this matter, it would be well to trust rather to their friendship than to great wisdom.
That is so good.
And ultimately, that's the basis for the fellowship, is that friendship and that sense that Gandalf has, and obviously Elrond agreed with him that was what was going to matter.
Yeah, I that makes the most sense too. I mean, under no other circumstances would you think that nearly half of the company should be hobbits. I mean, if you're sending 9 total people for half of them almost to be the smallest and least powerful and least strong, physically speaking, race of, people in Middle Earth, it's just like, why would you do that? And yet it's because they're trusting to friendship rather than great wisdom.
Yeah.
And it kind of harkens back actually to the reading that Don did earlier. He chose the portion where they get to Crick Hollow and have the bath and have the little mushroom supper. And sure enough, we get the same sense of, you're in danger. We know you're in danger. And Frodo's like, oh, well, you can't stop me. Please don't stop me. Like, oh, you're getting it all wrong. We're going with you. No, they don't know then either. And sure enough, they face some pretty crazy stuff between Crick Hollow and here in Rivendell, right? I mean, just the Barrow Downs alone, the Old Forest was scary enough. Old Man Willow and the Withywindle, the Barrow White, all before they even get to Bree, and then it's all Black Riders from there on out. And yet we still don't know what we're going to face. It could be worse, but we still want to go with you. Total dedication.
It's clear right from the start, right from that very first paragraph where Merry and Pippin are indignant.
Yeah, that
Sam had been chosen. Right?
Of course they were. Of course they were indignant. Yeah. Yeah. And even Frodo's like, what do you mean reward? That's not a reward. You have no clue what you're talking about. And that same theme comes up again. And I just love there's little tidbits throughout that kind of hint at other little fellowships, like the Rangers going out and trying to find news of the riders and of Aragorn and Elrond's sons. And, just little hints and pieces of that. And there's that little interlude that I really loved. It's not directly connected on its own to fellowship and community, but the virtue of the land of Rivendell was such that all fear and anxiety was lifted from their minds. And to me, it feels like now they can enjoy their fellowship and community. They're not worried about the thing in front of them.
Exactly. Let me just read that again, because I'd highlighted that as one of my favorite parts as well. This after it's explained about the virtue of the land of Rivendell, it says the future, good or ill, was not forgotten, but ceased to have any power over the present.
I love that.
Which is just such a wonderful philosophy in life,
isn't it?
Right?
I know.
And it continues, health and hope grew strong in them, and they were content with each good day as it came, taking pleasure in every meal and in every word and song.
That's fellowship.
So absolutely
right
does come back to the fellowship. Exactly. Yeah. That's what enables us to live in the present.
Yes.
And even though we still acknowledge that there are bad things ahead, we can still be very present because we're with friends.
Fellowship. I love that. The idea of the hobbits together, in their own small community within a community here, right? I mean, it's the larger community of Rivendell. And it's fantastic, and we get to see that come into play. But then we get this little smaller community of just the hobbits, and not just the 4, but also Bilbo, which is really got to be great for Frodo. I just love that. Wow. What a passage. That was excellent, James. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. It is always a privilege to work with you. I cannot wait for our 8-episode run to wrap up the 9th season of the PPP. And then after that, well, hopefully we won't have to wait 2 years for the next season of Rings of Power.
We'll have to wait and see.
We will. Hopefully it won't be an interminable wait for them to even make an announcement about the 3rd season of the Rings of Power. But always a joy to have you here. So thank you again.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks very much, Alan.
And continuing on that Rings of Power wrap-up connection, I'm very happy to welcome the Shield Maiden of Rohan herself, Dr. Sara Brown.
I am.
Back to the PPP. And not just for today either, folks. Sara's going to be joining me for the next 8 episodes as we go back to Appendix A to spend time in the tale of Aragorn and Arwen before we spend the rest of our time together on the hardy dwarves. Sara, welcome back.
Oh, it's so good to be back. I'm so excited.
I am too. Really looking forward to this run. What have you selected for today's reading on fellowship and community?
Okay, so this first extract I have chosen is from The Scouring of the Shire. The reason why I've chosen this one is because it's a wonderful moment where the hobbits come together to get rid of the ruffians.
Okay.
And Yes, it's this great moment where we see leadership from the main hobbits that we've travelled with, of course.
Yeah.
But we actually see all the hobbits of the Shire coming together to do what needs to be done.
Ah, I like that. All right. Well, since it's not Sara and Alan Talking Day, it's Tolkien Reading Day, I shall give you the floor and let's go with the reading.
Excellent. Okay. Farmer Cotton's household and all his guests were up early next morning. Nothing had been heard in the night, but more trouble would certainly come before the day was old. "Seems as if none of the ruffians were left up at Bag End," said Cotton, "but the gang from Waymeet will be along any time now." After breakfast, a messenger from the Tookland rode in. He was in high spirits. "The Thane has raised all our country," he said, "and the news is going like fire all ways. The ruffians that were watching our land have fled off south, those that escaped alive. The Thane has gone after them to hold off the big gang down that way, but he sent Mr. Peregrine back with all the other folk he can spare." The next news was less good. Merry, who had been out all night, came riding in about 10 o'clock. "There's a big band about 4 miles away," he said. "They're coming along the road from Waymeet, but a good many stray ruffians have joined up with them. There must be close on 100 of them, and they're fire-raising as they come. Curse them." "Ah, this lot won't stay to talk, they'll kill if they can," said Farmer Cotton. "If Tooks don't come sooner, we'd best get behind cover and shoot without arguing. There's got to be some fighting before this is settled, Mr. Frodo." The Tooks did come sooner. Before long they marched in 100 strong from Tuckborough and the Green Hills with Pippin at their head. Merry now had enough sturdy hobbitry to deal with the ruffians. Scouts reported that they were keeping close together. They knew that the countryside had risen against them, and plainly meant to deal with the rebellion ruthlessly at its centre in Bywater. But however grim they might be, they seemed to have no leader among them who understood warfare. They came on without any precautions. Merry laid his plans quickly. The ruffians came tramping along the east road, and without halting turned up the Bywater road, which ran for some way sloping up between high banks with low hedges on top. Round a bend, about a furlong from the main road, they met a stout barrier of old farm carts upturned. That halted them. At the same moment, they became aware that the hedges on both sides, just above their heads, were all lined with hobbits. Behind them, other hobbits now pushed out some more wagons that had been hidden in a field, and so blocked the way back. A voice spoke to them from above. "Well, you have walked into a trap," said Merry. "Your fellows from Hobbiton did the same, and one is dead and the rest are prisoners. Lay down your weapons. Then go back 20 paces and sit down. Any who try to break out will be shot." But the ruffians could not now be cowed so easily. A few of them obeyed, but were immediately set on by their fellows. A score or more broke back and charged the wagons. 6 were shot, but the remainder burst out, killing 2 hobbits, and then scattering across country in the direction of the woody end. 2 more fell as they ran. Merry blew a loud horn call, and there were answering calls from a distance. "They won't get far," said Pippin. "All that country is alive with our hunters now." Behind, the trapped men in the lane, still about 80, tried to climb the barrier and the banks, and the hobbits were obliged to shoot many of them, or hew them with axes. But many of the strongest and most desperate got out on the west side, and attacked their enemies fiercely, being now more bent on killing than escaping. Several hobbits fell, and the rest were wavering, when Merry and Pippin, who were on the east side, came across and charged the ruffians. Merry himself slew the leader, a great squint-eyed brute like a huge orc. Then he drew his forces off, encircling the last remnant of the men in a wide ring of archers. At last, all was over. Nearly 70 of the ruffians lay dead on the field, and a dozen were prisoners. 19 hobbits were killed, and some 30 were wounded. The dead ruffians were laden on wagons and hauled off to an old sand pit nearby, and there buried, in the battle pit, as it was afterwards called. The fallen hobbits were laid together in a grave on the hillside, where later a great stone was set up with a garden about it. So ended the Battle of Bywater, 1419, the last battle fought in the Shire, and the only battle since the Greenfields, 1147, away up in the North Farthing. In consequence, though it happily cost very few lives, it has a chapter to itself in the Red Book, and the names of all those who took part were made into a roll and learned by heart by Shire historians. The very considerable rise in the fame and fortune of the Cottons dates from this time, but at the top of the roll, in all accounts, stand the names of Captains Meriadoc and Peregrine.
Oh, I love that. What would Gandalf think of Captain Peregrine the Mighty?
I think he'd
Still
have
a
had,
fool of a toque.
yes, I think he would have had quite a chuckle, to be
I
honest.
think he would. I love that passage. I really do. That's a great choice for fellowship and community. I mean, it's the idea of all of the Shire coming together like that and facing off against a threat that in many ways was beyond them unless they came together like this in force, en masse, and led by somebody who, could come up with a strategy. In this case, sort of the laying of the wagons and blocking them on the road.
Absolutely. I mean, it just tells us what Peregrine and Pippin, rather, and Merry have learned since they've been away.
Yeah, they've both been in battle. They're both seasoned in that regard. They certainly aren't going to be as afraid as you might think, somebody might be the very first time they have to face off in battle against somebody. I know I'd be terrified. I'd be looking to find a way out.
Absolutely.
But, Merry was stabbing the Witch King in the back of the leg not that long ago. So facing off against some half-orcs is not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. These two have seen the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, and they were at the Black Gate.
Yeah. This
is nothing.
Yeah, we've got this.
Mm-hmm. But yes, it needed them to bring the hobbits together. That had to be the thing here. Because if even one of the ruffians had strategy and thought, it might be more of a problem. But I think part of the point is that they're portrayed as just this rabble who have
and they
no
really are. No
thinking.
Discipline, no, yeah, exactly. They're not skilled combatants. They're just bullies. And, to be able to face off against hobbits who are now led makes a difference. But again, you have to have both elements there. You have to have that leadership and you have to have the hobbits willing to do the fighting with them. And it's a real tragedy that 19 of them were killed, and you think about those hobbit families who have lost their husbands, their sons, their daughters, perhaps. Even in that sense, the community still comes together. They lay them all together in a single grave. They make it a memorial, and it becomes something that people learn the names of. What a wonderful example of community even into the future, that the names of everybody who took part were learned by heart by Shire historians. So just like the continuation of community. Really, really good choice.
Right. And I think that what makes this important is that they came together to fight for their home. Yes,
100% yes. I mean, this is, which is in essence what Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin did. They just had to take that fight elsewhere. But, the motivation was for them always to protect the Shire. So, of course, when they come back and they see it as it was, something had to be done. Yeah, that's just wonderful. And I love the leadership of the Cottons, too, in this. There's no mistaking at the end here when it talks about the rise in the fame and fortune of the Cottons dates from this time. They were involved. Farmer Cotton and his sons were
they were right up the front.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, they were.
Yeah.
Really great choice. And I know we still have some time, so I'm super excited because I believe you have another reading for us.
I do. And thank you so much for giving me extra time so I can give this second reading.
Oh, yeah.
This is a wonderful passage, a bit less known perhaps to some people than The Scouring of the Shire, which I'm sure is pretty familiar to all of your listeners.
Yeah.
This one comes from the Unfinished Tales, and it is the bit where we are told about the oath of Cirion and Eol. Oh,
that is great. Matt and I got to talk through that whole section several weeks ago. I know we're now, this episode is dropping on March 30th. So, this was almost 2 months ago that we did the oath, but I love hearing it, never get tired of it. And for those who only listen to our specials occasionally and things, I'm really glad they get to hear you read this.
Okay, here we go then. In the days of Cirion the Steward, there came a great assault by the Balchoth, who allied with orcs crossed the Anduin into the Wold and began the conquest of Calenarthon. From this deadly peril, which would have brought ruin upon Gondor, the coming of Eol the Young and the Rohirrim rescued the realm. When the war was over, men wondered in what way the steward would honour Eol and reward him, and expected that a great feast would be held in Minas Tirith, at which this would be revealed. But Cirion was a man who kept his own counsel. As the diminished army of Gondor made its way south, he was accompanied by Eorl and an Eored of the Riders of the North. When they came to the Mering stream, Cirion turned to Eorl and said, to men's wonder, "Farewell now, Eorl, son of Leod. I will return to my home, where much needs to be set in order. Calenarthon I commit to your care for this time, if you are not in haste to return to your own realm. In 3 months' time I will meet you here again, and then we will take counsel together." "I will come," Eorl answered, and so they parted. As soon as Cirion came to Minas Tirith, he summoned some of his most trusted servants. "Go now to the Whispering Wood," he said. "There you must reopen the ancient path to Amon Anwar. It is long overgrown, but the entrance is still marked by a standing stone beside the road, at that point where the northern region of the wood closes in upon it. The path turns this way and that, but at each turn there is a standing stone. Following these you will come at length to the end of the trees and find a stone stair that leads on upwards. I charge you to go no further. Do this work as swiftly as you may, and then return to me. Fell no trees, only clear a way by which a few men on foot can easily pass upwards. Leave the entrance by the road still shrouded, so that none that use the road may be tempted to use the path before I come there myself. Tell no one whither you go or what you have done. If any ask, say only that the Lord Steward wishes for a place to be made ready for his meeting with the Lord of the Riders." In due time, Cirion set out with Halas, his son, and the Lord of Dol Amroth, and 2 others of his council, and he met Eorl at the crossing of the Mering stream. With Eorl were 3 of his chief captains. "Let us go now to the place that I have prepared," said Cirion. Then they left a guard of riders at the bridge, and turned back into the tree-shadowed road, and came to the standing stone. There they left their horses, and another strong guard of soldiers of Gondor, and Cirion, standing by the stone, turned to his companions and said, "I go now to the hill of Or. Follow me if you will. With me shall come an esquire and another with Eorl to bear our arms. All others shall go unarmed as witnesses of our words and deeds in the high place. The path has been made ready, though none have used it since I came here with my father." Then Cirion led Eorl into the trees, and the others followed in order, and after they had passed the first of the inner stones, their voices were stilled, and they walked warily as if unwilling to make any sound. So they came at last to the upper slopes of the hill and passed through a belt of white birches and saw the stone stair going up to the summit. After the shadow of the wood, the sun seemed hot and bright, for it was the month of Urime, yet the crown of the hill was green, as if the year were still in Lotese. At the foot of the stair there was a small shelf or cove made in the hillside with low turf banks. There the company sat for a while, until Cirion rose and from his esquire took the white wand of office and the white mantle of the stewards of Gondor. Then, standing on the first step of the stair, he broke the silence, saying in a low but clear voice, "I will now declare what I have resolved, with the authority of the stewards of the kings, to offer to Eorl, son of Leod, lord of the Eotheod, in recognition of the valour of his people, and of the help beyond hope that he brought to Gondor in time of dire need. To Eorl I will give in free gift all the great land of Calenarthon, from Anduin to Isen. There, if he will, he shall be king, and his heirs after him, and his people shall dwell in freedom while the authority of the stewards endures, until the great king returns. No bond shall be laid upon them other than their own laws and will, save in this only. They shall live in perpetual friendship with Gondor, and its enemies shall be their enemies, while both realms endure. But the same bond shall be laid also on the people of Gondor." Then Eorl stood up, but remained for some time silent, for he was amazed by the great generosity of the gift and the noble terms in which it had been offered, and he saw the wisdom of Cirion both on his own behalf as ruler of Gondor, seeking to protect what remained of his realm, and as a friend of the Eotheod of whose needs he was aware. For they were now grown to a people too numerous for their land in the north, and longed to return south to their former home, but they were restrained by the fear of Dol Guldur. But in Calenarthon they would have room beyond hope, and yet be far from the shadows of Mirkwood. Yet beyond wisdom and policy, both Cirion and Eol were moved at that time by the great friendship that bound their peoples together, and by the love that was between them as true men. On the part of Cirion, the love was that of a wise father, old in the cares of the world, for a son in the strength and hope of his youth. While in Cirion, Eol saw the highest and noblest man of the world that he knew, and the wisest, on whom sat the majesty of the kings of men of long ago. At last, when Eol had swiftly passed all these things through his thought, he spoke, saying, Lord Steward of the great king, the gift that you offer I accept for myself and for my people. It far exceeds any reward that our deeds could have earned, if they had not themselves been a free gift of friendship. But now I will seal that friendship with an oath that shall not be forgotten. Then let us go now to the high place, said Cirion, and before these witnesses take such oaths as seem fitting.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, that whole chapter is such a great picture of fellowship, but I'm really glad that you got to that part. I wasn't sure where you were going to end it, and I thought, I wonder where you're going to end it. I'm so glad you got to the part about beyond wisdom and policy. You know, this deep friendship is what has established the community between Rohan and Gondor, established this sense of alliance, but more than alliance, friendship. And it's just a wonderful choice. What a section that is. I mean,
it really is.
It really,
and it's so
really
important, of course, to the events of the Lord of the Rings, because this is the reason why when Gondor called, Rohan would answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the thing, we joke a little bit. There's sort of that meme about, where was Gondor when the Westfold fell, but the truth is that Gondor and Rohan helped each other many times throughout the history.
Many times, yes.
And, yes, it was more often Rohan helping Gondor, but Gondor did its share as well. And it's just a fantastic history. I really love digging into that on the show with Matt. I mean, 6 episodes on Cirion and Eorl was so much fun. But that, you picked the heart of that passage, and I'm just really, really grateful. It's such a good fit for fellowship and community.
Good. I'm glad. I thought so too.
I do feel like, though, if I don't take this opportunity to read his oath in Quenya, we'd be missing a chance.
Do you know, I had a funny feeling you would want to, which is why I stopped where I stopped. I didn't want to take it away from you.
I mean, I know I have my own reading coming up, and folks, I'll just tell you right now, it actually piggybacks on Sara's earlier reading, the one about the hobbits. I'm going to talk about the restoration of the Shire and the community there, but I definitely have to do a little appendix here because why not hear some great Quenya? So I'll go ahead and pick up a little bit before that. Cirion then made answer. Standing to his full height, he laid his hand upon the tomb, and in his right hand held up the white wand of the stewards, and spoke words that filled those who heard them with awe. For as he stood up, the sun went down in flame in the west, and his white robe seemed to be on fire. And after he had vowed that Gondor should be bound by a like bond of friendship and aid in all need, he lifted up his voice and said in Quenya, Vanda sina termaruva, elena norio alcaranialian aralendil vrando vranwe. Nai tiruvante si harar mahalmassen minumen ari erui or ilye mahalmar ea tenoyo. And again he said in the common speech, This oath shall stand in memory of the glory of the land of the star and of the faith of Elendil the faithful, in the keeping of those who sit upon the thrones of the west, and of the one who is above all thrones forever.
Oh, that was gorgeous.
Thank
but
you.
you know, I don't think we can have just one side of the oaths.
No, so please, take it away.
Okay, because Eol's side of the oath is equally beautiful, but of course you don't get the Quenya. But I wouldn't be treading on your toes then, would I? So I'll do Eol.
Please do.
He spoke then in a great voice the oath of Eol. This he said in the tongue of the Eotheod, which in the common speech is interpreted, Hear now, all peoples who bow not to the shadow in the east. By the gift of the Lord of the Mundberg, we will come to dwell in the land that he names Calinarthon. And therefore I vow in my own name and on behalf of the Eotheod of the north, that between us and the great people of the west there shall be friendship for ever. Their enemies shall be our enemies, their need shall be our need, and whatsoever evil or threat or assault may come upon them, we will aid them to the utmost end of our strength. This vow shall descend to my heirs, all such as may come after me in our new land, and let them keep it in faith unbroken, lest the shadow fall upon them, and they become accursed.
Oh, I love that. And I still so desperately wish we had the way he said it, right? The little footnote to that says that this translation's imperfect because he, of course, spoke in the forms of verse and high speech that were used by the Rohirrim, in which Eorl had great skill. Mm-hmm. So it had to have been in alliterative verse. In Old English, alliterative verse. So,
wouldn't it have been lovely to have had the alliterative verse?
I'm still waiting for somebody to write that in Old English. That would be fantastic. What a great pair of passages. Sarah, thank you.
Oh, thanks for asking me.
And welcome back.
Yay.
I wouldn't have had it any other way. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of months as we cover one of my favorite stories, and I know it's one of everybody's favorite stories, really, in the appendices, the tale of Aragorn and Arwen, but also all that fun talk about dwarves, too.
Yes, absolutely fantastic. I'm so happy you asked me to come and do Aragorn and Arwen. I think there's a few things that I could say about Aragorn and Arwen.
I believe you will. This is certainly, I believe that our time with the Faramir and Éowyn story convinced me that there would be no better fit. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, folks, we'll be right back. Now, folks, if you're enjoying the PPP, please consider supporting the show by joining the Fellowship of the Podcast. That's what gives me the time and resources to work on making this show and all the others the best that they can be. Now, when you join, you become part of an amazing Discord community, and that includes live episode recordings, hangouts every month. You also get episode postscripts, an ad-free episode feed, free merch, and more.
You can also become part of our Questions After Nightfall episodes, or even join the show as a guest in the North Wing. So please, go to patreon.com/prancingponypod to show your support and join the Fellowship of the Podcast.
And you can always help us out by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and a rating on Spotify. And please recommend us to your friends.
All right. Well, Alan, it has been great to hear from, everybody who's been here so far. Matt, Don, James, Sara, some of your great co-hosts that you've had over the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. But we can't always have such high standards. I think it's your turn.
That was nice.
Thank you.
It feels like home.
Doesn't it? It does. It comes so naturally now.
It really does.
I'm sorry. I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
I'm not sorry. It works for me.
Okay. So, good. I was so nice when we first started.
You were.
Show
I remember. I think I had to sort of sharpen the edges a little bit.
You had to make me meaner.
I did. I just kept interrupting you.
You locked me in a cage and fed me raw meat and
sort of like
table scraps,
like Karkaroth. It was
exactly. Yeah. Anyway, well, all joking aside, I am excited to hear your reading today, Alan. So why don't you tell us what you got selected for today's Tolkien Reading Day special?
Well, there's so many wonderful examples of fellowship and community through the Legendarium. And you know me, I typically try to go for like a deep dive. I think I've pulled a couple of readings recently from, Smith of Wootton Major or from Leaf by Niggle, because I did one from Homecoming of Beorhtnoth, Beorhthelm's son, because I like to dig into the more obscure corners of the Legendarium or even non-Legendarium stories. This time around, though, I really wanted to showcase community. Fellowship's a little easier to find, whether it's the company themselves or other fellowships. So what I wanted to do this time was sort of follow on to Sara's reading. As she actually read from the Scouring of the Shire and how the hobbits stood up to the ruffians. I'm actually going to look at the Shire after all of that, sort of the rebuilding of the Shire, if you will, and just the way the community comes together. And I'm going to start by reading from the beginning of the chapter, The Grey Havens.
All right.
The clearing up certainly needed a lot of work, but it took less time than Sam had feared. The day after the battle, Frodo rode to Mitchell Delving and released the prisoners from the lockholes. One of the first that they found was poor Fredegar Bolger, fatty no longer. He had been taken when the ruffians smoked out a band of rebels that he led from their hidings up in the Brockenbors by the hills of Skerry. "You would have done better to come with us after all, poor old Fredegar," said Pippin, as they carried him out too weak to walk. He opened an eye and tried gallantly to smile. "Who's this young giant with the loud voice?" he whispered. "Not little Pippin? What's your size in hats now?" Then there was Lobelia. Poor thing, she looked very old and thin when they rescued her from a dark and narrow cell. She insisted on hobbling out on her own feet, and she had such a welcome. And there was such clapping and cheering when she appeared, leaning on Frodo's arm but still clutching her umbrella, that she was quite touched and drove away in tears. She had never in her life been popular before. But she was crushed by the news of Lotho's murder, and she would not return to Bag End. She gave it back to Frodo and went to her own people, the Bracegirdles of Hardbottle. When the poor creature died next spring, she was, after all, more than 100 years old, Frodo was surprised and much moved. She had left all that remained of her money and of Lotho's for him to use in helping hobbits made homeless by the Troubles. So that feud was ended. Old Will Whitfoot had been in the Lockholes longer than any, and though he had perhaps been treated less harshly than some, he needed a lot of feeding up before he could look the part of mayor. So Frodo agreed to act as his deputy until Mr. Whitfoot was in shape again. The only thing that he did as deputy mayor was to reduce the sheriffs to their proper functions and numbers. The task of hunting out the last remnant of the ruffians was left to Merry and Pippin, and it was soon done. The southern gangs, after hearing the news of the Battle of Bywater, fled out of the land and offered little resistance to the Thane. Before the year's end, the few survivors were rounded up in the woods, and those that surrendered were shown to the borders. Meanwhile, the labor of repair went on apace, and Sam was kept very busy. Hobbits can work like bees when the mood and the need comes on them. Now there were thousands of willing hands of all ages, from the small but nimble ones of the hobbit lads and lasses to the well-worn and horny ones of the gaffers and gammers. Before Yule, not a brick was left standing of the new sheriff houses or of anything that had been built by Sharky's men. But the bricks were used to repair many an old hole to make it snugger and drier. Great stores of goods and food and beer were found that had been hidden away by the ruffians in sheds and barns and deserted holes, and especially in the tunnels at Mitchell Delving and in the old quarries at Skerry, so that there was a great deal better cheer that Yule than anyone had hoped for. One of the first things done in Hobbiton, before even the removal of the new mill, was the clearing of the hill and Bag End, and the restoration of Bagshot Row. The front of the new sand pit was all leveled and made into a large sheltered garden, and new holes were dug in the southward face, back into the hill, and they were lined with brick. The gaffer was restored to number 3, and he said often, and did not care who heard it, "It's an ill wind as blows nobody no good, as I always say, and all's well as ends better." There was some discussion of the name that the new row should be given. Battle Gardens was thought of, or Better Smiles. But after a while, in sensible Hobbit fashion, it was just called New Row. It was a purely Bywater joke to refer to it as Sharky's End. The trees were the worst loss and damage, for at Sharky's bidding they had been cut down recklessly, far and wide over the Shire, and Sam grieved over this more than anything else. For one thing, this hurt would take long to heal, and only his great-grandchildren, he thought, would see the Shire as it ought to be. Then, suddenly, one day, for he had been too busy for weeks to give a thought to his adventures, he remembered the gift of Galadriel. He brought the box out and showed it to the other travelers, for so they were now called by everyone, and asked their advice. "I wondered when you would think of it," said Frodo. "Open it." Inside it was filled with a gray dust, soft and fine, in the middle of which was a seed, like a small nut with a silver shale. "What can I do with this?" said Sam. "Throw it in the air on a breezy day and let it do its work," said Pippin. "On what?" said Sam. "Choose one spot as a nursery and see what happens to the plants there," said Merry. "But I'm sure the lady would not like me to keep it all for my own garden, now so many folk have suffered," said Sam. Use all the wits and knowledge you have of your own, Sam, said Frodo, and then use the gift to help your work and better it. And use it sparingly. There is not much here, and I expect every grain has a value. So Sam planted saplings in all the places where specially beautiful or beloved trees had been destroyed, and he put a grain of the precious dust in the soil at the root of each. He went up and down the Shire in this labor, but if he paid special attention to Hobbiton and Bywater, no one blamed him. And at the end, he found that he still had a little of the dust left, so he went to the 3 farthing stone, which is as near the center of the Shire as no matter, and cast it in the air with his blessing. The little silver nut he planted in the party field, where the tree had once been, and he wondered what would come of it. All through the winter he remained as patient as he could, and tried to restrain himself from going round constantly to see if anything was happening. Spring surpassed his wildest hopes. His trees began to sprout and grow as if time was in a hurry and wished to make 1 year do for 20. In the party field, a beautiful young sapling leaped up. It had silver bark and long leaves and burst into golden flowers in April. It was indeed a Malorn, and it was the wonder of the neighborhood. In after years, as it grew in grace and beauty, it was known far and wide, and people would come long journeys to see it, the only Malorn west of the mountains and east of the sea, and one of the finest in the world. Altogether, 1420 in the Shire was a marvelous year. Not only was there wonderful sunshine and delicious rain in due times and perfect measure, but there seemed something more, an air of richness and growth, and a gleam of a beauty beyond that of mortal summers that flicker and pass upon this middle earth. All the children born or begotten in that year, and there were many, were fair to see and strong, and most of them had a rich golden hair that had before been rare among hobbits. The fruit was so plentiful that young hobbits very nearly bathed in strawberries and cream, and later they sat on the lawns under the plum trees and ate, until they had made piles of stones like small pyramids or the heaped skulls of a conqueror, and then they moved on. And no one was ill, and everyone was pleased, except those who had to mow the grass. In the South Farthing, the vines were laden, and the yield of leaf was astonishing. And everywhere there was so much corn that at harvest every barn was stuffed. The North Farthing barley was so fine that the beer of 1420 malt was long remembered and became a byword. Indeed, a generation later, one might hear an old gaffer in an inn, after a good pint of well-earned ale, put down his mug with a sigh. Ah, that was proper 1420, that was. Sam stayed at first at the Cottons with Frodo, but when the new row was ready, he went with the gaffer. In addition to all his other labors, he was busy directing the cleaning up and restoring of Bag End, but he was often away in the Shire on his forestry work, so he was not at home in early March, and did not know that Frodo had been ill. On the 13th of that month, Farmer Cotton found Frodo lying on his bed. He was clutching a white gem that hung on a chain about his neck, and he seemed half in a dream. "It is gone forever," he said, "and now all is dark and empty." But the fit passed, and when Sam got back on the 25th, Frodo had recovered, and he said nothing about himself. In the meanwhile, Bag End had been set in order, and Merry and Pippin came over from Crickhollow, bringing back all the old furniture and gear, so that the old hole soon looked very much as it always had done. When all was at last ready, Frodo said, "When are you going to move in and join me, Sam?" Sam looked a bit awkward. "There is no need to come yet if you don't want to," said Frodo. "But you know the gaffer is close at hand, and he will be very well looked after by Widow Rumble." "It's not that, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, and he went very red. "Well, what is it?" "It's Rosie. Rose Cotton," said Sam. "It seems she didn't like my going abroad at all, poor lass. But as I hadn't spoken, she couldn't say so. And I didn't speak because I had a job to do first. But now I have spoken, and she says, 'Well, you've wasted a year, so why wait longer?' 'Wasted,' I says. I wouldn't call it that. Still, I see what she means. I feel torn in two, as you might say." I see, said Frodo. You want to get married, and yet you want to live with me in Bag End, too. But, my dear Sam, how easy. Get married as soon as you can, and then move in with Rosie. There's room enough in Bag End for as big a family as you could wish for. And so it was settled. Sam Gamgee married Rose Cotton in the spring of 1420, which was also famous for its weddings. And they came and lived at Bag End. Oh, man. Oh, I love that.
That's so great.
So much.
Such a great passage. I'm so glad you chose that one. It really shows us hobbits kind of at their best, doesn't it?
It really does.
Kind of returning to hobbit community.
Yeah.
Especially for the four travelers after everything they've seen over the course of the story, and even everything the Shire has seen with the
all
being
the stuff
overrun by the
Sharky.
ruffians. Yeah. But here we see them just getting back to simple hobbit life, simple hobbit community, and I love the many nods to coming together that we see there.
Yeah,
and
all the hands working. Thousands of hobbits
working. Everybody working to rebuild. The ending of the feud with Lobelia. I mean, that's such a beautiful moment.
That really is such a wonderful thing that I think it's so easy to almost overlook. I mean, the fact that she left all of her money and Lothos to Frodo specifically to help the people that had been, that is beautiful. And I
remember us talking about that when we did this chapter last season. And it's such a great moment. And you're right. It's easy to miss because, Lobelia is just such a one joke character in the beginning.
She kind of is. Yeah.
She stops being that towards the end.
She really does. I mean, she's such a hero, and I love her strength. And I mean, your heart breaks for her. She gets out and she's free again. And the first thing she's got to learn is that her son is dead. He's been murdered. Yeah. So, but it's just neat to see all of those come out of jail, Mayor Whitfoot and Fatty Bolger. And I mean, there's a diet plan for you, but,
that'll do it.
Will. Yeah. I
being stuck in prison. Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to try that, but just the idea of Shire community, Shire rebuilding. But I love the way the passage that Tolkien puts together here goes back and forth from the larger Shire to the four, or even just to the two, to Sam and Frodo. And it's just wonderful to see their fellowship, their small community inset in the large community of the hobbits.
That's a great point. I love that because, I'm thinking about the way the passage talks about, the rebuilding and the end of the feud and all the stuff we were just talking about. But then there's that moment where it just kind of zooms into the four travelers again and the discussion of what to do with the gift of Galadriel.
Yeah.
And then we go back up to the macro level when Sam actually shares the gift, right? He goes with up and down the Shire.
Oh.
He shares it with the whole Shire. And he gives a little special attention to Hobbiton and Bywater, but people understand that.
Not at anybody's expense,
Right.
That's the thing.
He shares it across the whole Shire. And then the last little bit, a little bit of a nod to Pippin's suggestion where he just kind of scatters the last bit at the 3 farthing stone and let it go where it may. It's great. It is a really cool macro level, micro level, then back to the macro.
Yeah.
And then back to the micro. When we talk about Sam moving in with Frodo. Yeah.
I love that. I almost didn't read that part. I almost ended it with my favorite little bit about, that proper 1420, it feels right. Maybe because I feel like I'm an old Gafferton in myself, but I just felt like that little extra brings us back to their incredibly close fellowship, that Frodo and Sam's friendship is so central to the whole of the Lord of the Rings. And to see Frodo, encourage Sam, what do you want? Let's make it happen. You want to marry Rosie and you want to live here? Do it. Make it happen. Yeah. It's fantastic.
And at the risk of reading too much into this, I like the fact that when the story starts with Bilbo at the beginning of The Hobbit, and we're told that in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. And here at the end, we're seeing in the same hole in the ground, there's going to live a whole family of hobbits.
It's so beautiful.
I love that. And I not going to say that Tolkien intended that, but I like it. It's going to be part of my headcanon now that's
Absolutely.
An intentional kind of changing of the original image. And I think that's really neat.
I do too. And you're right. Who knows how he intended us to take that? I mean, I think that's one thing we've talked about for years on this show is the applicability and the fact that we as readers get to enjoy it the way we want to. And I also liked is the strong word. I was touched by the sort of the first appearance of that phrase of being torn in two for Sam.
Oh, yeah.
It just leads to so much, about Sam and even really Frodo. He doesn't use that phrase himself, but Frodo's going to feel torn, and soon he's going to leave. And it will be Sam again torn in two, but this time torn into with staying behind in the Shire or leaving.
Right.
Yeah.
Each of them has to make a decision because you can't take both paths, right? You can't be torn in two. You have to be whole.
Yes, you do. And you have to move forward in whatever path you choose and put your whole self there,
Yeah.
And Sam does that fantastically for a very long time.
He does.
Yeah. It's a long time.
He does really fully embrace his community, doesn't he?
He does.
We see that he becomes mayor
for life.
How many times, right?
Yeah.
And has this huge family and
the brood.
Right.
The Gardner brood.
Yeah. I mean, Sam is really going to lean into community in a big way, as are Merry and Pippin. Mm-hmm. Frodo can't, he can't,
he's no longer able.
Right.
Literally.
Exactly. He
cannot.
literally cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he needs to be alone and he's going to the Undying Lands and he's not going to be alone literally, but he's not going to be part of this community. He's going to have to leave this community behind, and he's going to go to a place where he's never really it's never really going to be his place. He'll
always be a guest there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember us speculating at the very end of last season about what happens with Frodo there and Sam. And I remember sort of changing my mind. I still, in my head canon, we talked about the letter that Tolkien wrote about why Bilbo went with Frodo. And it was because Frodo needed Bilbo there. Like it was, he needed that touch of home, and Bilbo was that for him. And so it made me come to the conclusion that when Sam goes, Frodo's still around.
He needs that same touch of home. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That was so much fun. I'm so grateful to have had a chance to read that. And it's funny, I chose my passage after everybody else had chosen theirs, so I wasn't sure what would still be available. Speaking of passages, you've always had a history of picking some of the most wonderful passages to illustrate the theme. And this year's no different. Would you tell us what you've selected, then do your thing?
All right. Yes, thank you. And I appreciate that. As you hinted at the beginning of this episode, it's been a long time since we started this podcast together.
And
we started it in the first age with the Silmarillion. And
true.
I think kind of coming back to the Prancing Pony podcast at the risk of getting a little emotional about this, I kind of wanted to go back to the beginning, and I wanted to reach back to the Silmarillion. And I thought pretty quickly of a couple of passages that give us a chance to examine community again at that kind of macro level, the big level, and really not just community, but communities, how communities come together.
Okay.
And so I've got a couple of passages here that illustrate communities coming together, how they other each other in some ways and how they accept each other in other ways. And I didn't intend it, but after I picked these two passages, I realized that they both prominently featured one particular character. And I want to discuss that after I read them both. But I'll go ahead and read them both. So first I've got a rather short passage from chapter 13 of the Silmarillion. This is Of the Return of the Noldor. Okay. And this is going to be the passage that starts with the Medeth Adredad, the Feast of Reuniting. And so we'll see that, and we'll see how the Noldor start to kind of reassimilate back into the Elvish society in Beleriand.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go to chapter 17 of the Silmarillion, of the coming of men into the West. And I think everybody probably can guess what I'm
now I know which
that.
elf you're talking about is in both
Of course
passages.
you do.
My favorite first stage elf, but we'll talk about him after. Go ahead.
All right. When 20 years of the sun had passed, Fingolfin, king of the Noldor, made a great feast, and it was held in the spring near to the pools of Ivrin, whence the swift river Narog rose. For there the lands were green and fair at the feet of the mountains of shadow that shielded them from the north. The joy of that feast was long remembered in later days of sorrow, and it was called Medeth Aderdad, the Feast of Reuniting. Thither came many of the chieftains and people of Fingolfin and Finrod, and of the sons of Feanor, Maedhros and Maglor, with warriors of the eastern march. And there came also great numbers of the grey elves, wanderers of the woods of Beleriand and folk of the havens, with Círdan their lord. There came even green elves from Osiriand, the land of 7 rivers, far off under the walls of the Blue Mountains. But out of Doriath there came but 2 messengers, Mablung and Daidon, bearing greetings from the king. At Medeth Aderdad many counsels were taken in goodwill, and oaths were sworn of league and friendship. And it is told that at this feast the tongue of the grey elves was most spoken, even by the Noldor, for they learned swiftly the speech of Beleriand, whereas the Sindar were slow to master the tongue of Valinor. The hearts of the Noldor were high and full of hope, and to many among them it seemed that the words of Feanor had been justified, bidding them seek freedom and fair kingdoms in Middle-earth. And indeed there followed after long years of peace, while their swords fenced Beleriand from the ruin of Morgoth, and his power was shut behind his gates. In those days there was joy beneath the new sun and moon, and all the land was glad. But still the shadow brooded in the north. And when again 30 years had passed, Turgon, son of Fingolfin, left Navrast where he dwelt, and sought out Finrod his friend upon the island of Tall Sirion. And they journeyed southward along the river, being weary for a while of the northern mountains. And as they journeyed, night came upon them beyond the meres of twilight beside the waters of Sirion, and they slept upon his banks beneath the summer stars. But Ulmo, coming up the river, laid a deep sleep upon them in heavy dreams, and the trouble of the dreams remained after they awoke. But neither said aught to the other, for their memory was not clear, and each believed that Ulmo had sent a message to him alone. But unquiet was upon them ever after, and doubt of what should befall, and they wandered often alone in untrodden lands, seeking far and wide for places of hidden strength. For it seemed to each that he was bidden to prepare for a day of evil, and to establish a retreat, lest Morgoth should burst from Angband and overthrow the armies of the north. Now on a time Finrod and Galadriel his sister were the guests of Thingol their kinsman in Doriath. Then Finrod was filled with wonder at the strength and majesty of Menegroth, its treasuries and armories, and its many-pillared halls of stone. And it came into his heart that he would build wide halls behind ever-guarded gates in some deep and secret place beneath the hills. Therefore he opened his heart to Thingol, telling him of his dreams. And Thingol spoke to him of the deep gorge of the river Narog, and the caves under the high Faroth in its steep western shore. And when he departed, he gave him guides to lead him to that place of which few yet knew. Thus Finrod came to the caverns of Narog, and began to establish there deep halls and armories after the fashion of the mansions of Menegroth, and that stronghold was called Nargothrond. In that labor Finrod was aided by the dwarves of the Blue Mountains, and they were rewarded well, for Finrod had brought more treasures out of Tirion than any other of the princes of the Noldor. And in that time was made for him the Nauglamir, the necklace of the dwarves, most renowned of their works in the elder days. It was a carcanet of gold, and set therein were gems uncounted from Valinor. But it had a power within it, so that it rested lightly on its wearer as a strand of flax, and whatsoever neck it clasped, it sat always with grace and loveliness. There in Nargothrond Finrod made his home with many of his people, and he was named in the tongue of the dwarves Felagund, hewer of caves, and that name he bore thereafter until his end. But Finrod Felagund was not the first to dwell in the caves beside the river Narog. Galadriel his sister went not with him to Nargothrond, for in Doriath dwelt Celeborn, kinsman of Thingol, and there was great love between them. Therefore she remained in the hidden kingdom, and abode with Melian, and of her learned great lore and wisdom concerning Middle-earth. But Turgon remembered the city set upon a hill, Tirion the fair with its tower and tree, and he found not what he sought, but returned to Nevrast, and sat in peace in Vinyamar by the shores of the sea. And in the next year Ulmo himself appeared to him, and bade him go forth alone into the vale of Sirion. And Turgon went forth, and by the guidance of Ulmo he discovered the hidden vale of Tumladen in the encircling mountains, in the midst of which there was a hill of stone. Of this he spoke to none as yet, but returned once more to Nevrast, and there began in his secret councils to devise the plan of a city after the manner of Tirion upon Tuna, for which his heart yearned in exile.
Oh, wow. Shawn, that was great. I mean, I knew you said you were going to do the Metathadathad, and I thought, oh, that's fantastic. I'd forgotten just how much more there is to that, afterwards. I mean, yeah. And when again 30 years had passed, but still,
it's that 10,000-foot view of the Silmarillion.
Exactly. That's what the Silmarillion does for you.
Yeah.
But I love that. I mean, we get sort of the community even in Doriath. We get the friendship and community between Turgon and Finrod.
Yeah.
And of course, we got the incredible example of the Metathadathad itself. I love that.
Right.
I loved seeing all the different elves come together. The Noldor,
even the Feanorians, a couple of them at least. The Ems, they came.
They did, and I like that the Noldor were willing to speak the Sindarin tongue rather than forcing these elves to try to learn their tongue.
Yeah,
and to do that by choice rather than later when they would have to
when they're forced to not speak Quenya. Yeah, yeah. And you think of how important language is to Tolkien and how language is so important to this story specifically that is about the people that speak these languages Tolkien invented. And I mean, it's a strong marker of community.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Noldor are willing to speak Sindarin is them saying, hey, we're going to be on your level. We're in your land. We're going to speak your language. Yes. Okay. Your inferior gray elven brains can't process the Quenya language. But that aside, I mean, there's a positive side to it too.
There is. I mean, they were slow to master the tongue of Valinor. Okay.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, instead of being the haughty, arrogant Noldor that we're sort of accustomed to.
Right. Absolutely.
They go ahead and kind of humble themselves a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's a really neat example. I love the reminder of Nargothrond and, Finrod, the way he actually has a conversation with Thingol about that. Mm-hmm. A little bit of community building there as well.
Yeah. The transmission of knowledge, right?
Yes.
I mean, Finrod can't build Nargothrond without Thingol's knowledge of hey, there's this river and there's a place that you could build a place like this.
And here's the name and number of a really good dwarven contractor.
And that too, the dwarves coming to, to work for Finrod. And it's a paid gig, obviously.
Well, sure, of course, but they don't have to do it.
Right. And there must be friendship there if they give him a name in their own tongue. We know the dwarves are not.
Yeah.
They're not liberal with giving names
in
the dwarven tongue, are they?
That is true. And of course they made the Nauglamir. I mean, you almost forget that it was originally made for him because it's so closely tied with Thingol and with
Thingol,
the Silmaril later that you forget, or at least I have forgotten sometimes, that it was originally made for Finrod. And what a description of that piece as well. But just fantastic.
It's lovely.
Really,
and there's
really
a couple of other things in there as well. We've got Galadriel. Obviously, we know that Galadriel learns a great deal from Melian, and much of who she is in Lord of the Rings, she is because she learns from Melian how to be wise and how to be this sort of powerful matriarch of an elven community. So we get that there. Obviously,
hopefully Celeborn listens to her more than Thingol listened to Melian.
I think
he is called the Wise, so I think he must.
Right.
Yeah,
I think he must. I was bummed that we didn't get more of the founding of Gondolin in this passage. I think it's actually a couple of chapters further in, and I just couldn't get it in here.
No,
but we'll see something interesting in the way Finrod and Turgon both kind of deal with this premonition that they've received from Ulmo and how they both build secret communities and fill them with their people. And I mean, I guess it doesn't ultimately go well for either of them.
Well, no. pretty much anything in this realm. This is Beleriand.
Right.
It will all end under the sea.
Everything's going to fall. It's interesting that Nargothrond isn't quite as isolationist as Gondolin will be.
True. Though in some ways, maybe it would have been better had it stayed that way. I'm thinking of
certainly would have been better if they hadn't built that bridge.
Yeah, exactly. Turin's sort of turning him from an isolationist community into, an offensive force was a strategic error.
You know what we need? We need a causeway coming in here.
That's right.
Maybe just like sort of, I don't know, dragon wide, maybe just throwing that out there.
Exactly. But not 2 dragons wide. We only want to
just one. Just one. No dragon's going to come over it. They can't fly. So come on.
Oh man. Oh, Turin. Yeah. I even love the reminder of the community of Tyrion. That this is what, sort of motivates Turgon in terms of his desire to build Gondolin. It's remembering this place, this fair city with its tower and tree, remembering his fellowship and the community of Tyrion, and he wants to duplicate that here.
Yeah. He wants to create a little Tyrion in Beleriand. He wants to bring a little bit of Eldamar here.
Yeah.
And that's a lovely thought.
Yeah, it's neat to see that he's motivated by that inspiration.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you've got more to read. So you said you're reading from 17, was it?
Yes. So this is chapter 17. This is from near the beginning of the chapter.
Okay.
Which is also called Of the Coming of Men into the West.
I love that. All right.
In a valley among the foothills of the mountains, below the springs of Thalos, Finrod saw lights in the evening, and far off he heard the sound of song. At this he wondered much, for the green elves of that land lit no fires, nor did they sing by night. At first he feared that a raid of orcs had passed the leaguer of the north, but as he drew near he perceived that it was not so, for the singers used a tongue that he had not heard before, neither that of dwarves nor of orcs. Then Felagund, standing silent in the night shadow of the trees, looked down into the camp, and there he beheld a strange people. Now these were a part of the kindred and following of Beor the Old, as he was afterwards called, a chieftain among men. After many lives of wandering out of the east, he had led them at last over the Blue Mountains, the first of the race of men to enter Beleriand. And they sang because they were glad, and believed that they had escaped from all perils, and had come at last to a land without fear. Long Felagund watched them, and love for them stirred in his heart. But he remained hidden in the trees until they had all fallen asleep. Then he went among the sleeping people, and sat beside their dying fire where none kept watch. And he took up a rude harp which Beor had laid aside, and he played music upon it such as the ears of men had not heard, for they had as yet no teachers in the art, save only the dark elves in the wild lands. Now men awoke and listened to Felagund as he harped and sang, and each thought that he was in some fair dream, until he saw that his fellows were awake also beside him. But they did not speak or stir while Felagund still played, because of the beauty of the music and the wonder of the song. Wisdom was in the words of the elven king, and the hearts grew wiser that hearkened to him. For the things of which he sang, of the making of Arda and the bliss of Aman beyond the shadows of the sea, came as clear visions before their eyes, and his elvish speech was interpreted in each mind according to its measure. Thus it was that men called King Felagund, whom they first met of all the Eldar, Gnome, that is wisdom in the language of that people, and after him they named his folk Nomin the Wise. Indeed, they believed at first that Felagund was one of the Valar, of whom they had heard rumor that they dwelt far in the west, and this was, some say, the cause of their journeying. But Felagund dwelt among them, and taught them true knowledge, and they loved him, and took him for their lord, and were ever after loyal to the house of Finarfin. Now the Eldar were beyond all other peoples skilled in tongues, and Felagund discovered also that he could read in the minds of men such thoughts as they wished to reveal in speech, so that their words were easily interpreted. It is said also that these men had long had dealings with the dark elves east of the mountains, and from them had learned much of their speech. And since all the languages of the Quendi were of one origin, the language of Beor and his folk resembled the elven tongue in many words and devices. It was not long, therefore, before Felagund could hold converse with Beor, and while he dwelt with him, they spoke much together. But when he questioned him concerning the arising of men and their journeys, Beor would say little, and indeed he knew little, for the fathers of his people had told few tales of their past, and a silence had fallen upon their memory. "A darkness lies behind us," Beor said, "and we have turned our backs upon it, and we do not desire to return thither even in thought. Westwards our hearts have been turned, and we believe that there we shall find light." But it was said afterwards among the Eldar that when men awoke in Hildorien at the rising of the sun, the spies of Morgoth were watchful, and tidings were soon brought to him. And this seemed to him so great a matter that secretly, under shadow, he himself departed from Angband and went forth into Middle-earth, leaving to Sauron the command of the war. Of his dealings with men the Eldar indeed knew nothing at that time, and learnt but little afterwards, but that a darkness lay upon the hearts of men, as the shadow of the kinslaying and the doom of Mandos lay upon the Noldor. They perceived clearly even in the people of the elf friends whom they first knew. To corrupt or destroy whatsoever arose new and fair was ever the chief desire of Morgoth. And doubtless he had this purpose also in his errand, by fear and lies to make men the foes of the Eldar, and bring them up out of the east against Beleriand. But this design was slow to ripen, and was never wholly achieved. For men, it is said, were at first very few in number, whereas Morgoth grew afraid of the growing power and union of the Eldar, and came back to Angband, leaving behind at that time but few servants, and those of less might and cunning. Now Felagund learned from Beor that there were many other men of like mind who were also journeying westward. "Others of my own kin have crossed the mountains," he said, "and they are wandering not far away. And the Haladin, a people from whom we are sundered in speech, are still in the valleys on the eastern slopes, awaiting tidings before they venture further. There are yet other men, whose tongue is more like to ours, with whom we have had dealings at times. They were before us on the westward march, but we passed them, for they are a numerous people, and yet keep together and move slowly, being all ruled by one chieftain whom they call Marach. Now the green elves of Ossiriand were troubled by the coming of men, and when they heard that a lord of the Eldar from over the sea was among them, they sent messengers to Felagund. "Lord," they said, "if you have power over these newcomers, bid them return by the ways that they came, or else to go forward. For we desire no strangers in this land to break the peace in which we live. And these folk are hewers of trees and hunters of beasts. Therefore, we are their unfriends, and if they will not depart, we shall afflict them in all ways that we can." Then, by the advice of Felagund, Beor gathered all the wandering families and kindreds of his people, and they removed over Gelion, and took up their abode in the lands of Amrad and Amras, upon the east banks of the Kelon, south of Nan Elmoth, near to the borders of Doriath. And the name of that land thereafter was Estelad, the encampment. But when after a year had passed, Felagund wished to return to his own country, Beor begged leave to come with him, and he remained in the service of the king of Nargothrond while his life lasted. In this way he got his name, Beor, whereas his name before had been Balan, for Beor signified vassal in the tongue of his people. The rule of his folk he committed to Baran, his elder son, and he did not return again to Estelad.
Wow, that was a really interesting choice. I liked that. And I like that you kept going, because I was thinking, okay, if we're just talking about, fellowship and community, it's going to be Finrod getting to know the men, and yet you were able to bring in so much more. I loved the mention of the other houses of men that Beor talks about. Of course, each of these being their own communities. And then interestingly, the first time we get some conflict with another community. We have the Green Elves of Ossiriand.
Yeah.
So we had
the
these
Green
two
Elves don't
communities.
welcome them. They other the men. They
do.
These people are not like us, and we don't want them here. We don't understand their ways. They're clumsy. They kill things. They cut down trees. Yeah. And I get it. I mean, it's scary.
They are other. They are different.
Yeah, they are different.
And the solution is fair. Felagund's like, you know what? You should probably move on. And so they do.
They do, but they become part of his community in doing that.
Exactly.
And Beor becomes his vassal forever. So much so that he leaves behind Estelad eventually.
Yes.
And he changes his name.
Yeah.
He takes on a new
My
name.
name is now
symbolic.
Vassal. That is
that's
really saying something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of self-effacing in a way.
It is.
It's like, my name is just Vassal. Stop to think about it. Like that's, dude. But
because we talk about the three houses of men, right? The house of Beor, the house of Vassal is really what we're saying every time. The guy who
that's
is
a
just
really good point.
committed himself to Finrod. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And the whole identity of this people now becomes, we are the people who are the vassals of Finrod. We are the first ones that he found. We are the first ones to love him and to know him and to become friends with him. That's lovely.
It really, really is.
Again, we see a name. We see a people giving Finrod a name in their language.
Yes,
they call him Gnome.
Yeah.
I've long said, I think this is a nod to the Book of Lost Tales, the early legendarium when Tolkien called the Noldor the gnomes. This is a way of kind of bringing that back and saying, hey, when you learn about this wise people, gnomes of folklore, this is what you're hearing about. And it's based on this love between men and Finrod once upon a time.
I do love that, the way that Tolkien takes the things that, you might think of gnomes as, these little guys with a funny hat sitting on your lawn, but let me tell you the real story.
Right. They're these tall, beautiful, musical people. Yeah.
Immortal and wise beyond imagining. And and of course, Finrod, Finrod always has been my favorite. And so I was so grateful that you chose this. He's so foresighted. It would have been very easy for him to other these men, to lump them in with orcs,
right?
Or to lump them in with dwarves, which is not to say a whole lot higher than orcs in the eyes of a lot of the elves.
Right.
Not Finrod. Finrod, of course, had already grown close to the dwarves, but there's certainly no questioning that the elves are superior, so to speak.
Yeah.
But,
and it's interesting that you mentioned his foresight, because I was going to ask, what is it about Finrod that makes him so receptive to welcoming others? We see it first with the dwarves, so much that they give him a name in their own language. We see it here so much that they give him a name in their own language. Like, what is it about Finrod? Maybe it is his foresight. Maybe it is just the knowledge that if we are going to defeat evil, even for a short time, we're going to need the help of all these people. I can't build my hidden city without the help of these dwarves.
Yep.
And these people, these men, they're strong. They're rustic and they're crude and they're rude and they're hairy, but they're strong, and we can, they will be good allies. And I think he sees that when the other elves don't.
It is so really interesting that you mentioned that, because now I'm put in mind of his sister, of Galadriel, who thinks the exact same way about the dwarves later on. She sees in the dwarves the perfect fighters, the perfect warriors to defeat the orcs. And she builds a friendship with them. It's just, wow.
That's a really good point.
The two of them.
They clearly didn't learn it from Thingol. I mean, they learned a lot of things from Thingol, but they did not learn that from Thingol.
No, they did not. They absolutely did not. So there must be something with Finarfin. I mean, he must have really taught them well, sort of what comes to mind.
And you stop and think, man, what if he had come back to Middle-earth? Because he stayed in Valinor.
Right, exactly. He didn't go on that march.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
So much wisdom there.
Yeah, absolutely. What a fantastic passage. I really thank you again for joining me for this. I really hope that we'll see you back here again soon, by the way. No pressure, but
I look forward to coming back again soon. I know we couldn't make it happen this season, except for this, but you know where to find me.
I do indeed, sir. Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Join me again next week when Dr. Sara Brown begins her run this season for the PPP's, can't believe I'm saying this either, 30th Questions After Nightfall.
Wow. Wow.
That's mind-boggling.
I can't wait for that, and I can't wait for her next run on the show. It's going to be amazing.
It is going to be good.
Well, folks, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP. That's our editor, Jordan Rennells, our barlowman, Becca Davis, social media manager, Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator, Katie McKenna, graphic artist, Megan Collins, and website guru, Phil Dean.
And please take a minute to check out the prancingponypodcast.com. That's where you'll find our show notes, outtakes, Prancing Pony Ponderings, as well as our online storefront where you can get PPP merch, including with all of that great episode artwork that Megan's been doing for the show over the last 2 seasons.
Oh, there's some amazing stuff out there. Absolutely.
So amazing work.
Yeah. You'll also want to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast is, after all, a podcast about the books. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in a book that we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. And we do get a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, so we thank you for that.
And of course, we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'm going to start with DeMay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Zaksu in Illinois, Sara in New Jersey, Joshua in Massachusetts, Lucy in Texas, Keith in Alabama, and Erica in Texas.
There's also Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Shawn in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen from Massachusetts, Olivia in London, Robert in Arizona, Nick in Wisconsin, Lewis in South Carolina, Thomas in Germany, Craig in California, Bailey in Texas, Kevin in Massachusetts, Julie in Washington, Bruce in California, Joe in Maryland, Nathan in Arizona, and Kevin in Pennsylvania. Folks, thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed. Thank you.
And everyone listening, make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or whatever your favorite podcast app is.
That's right. And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, your favorite passage on fellowship and community to barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com.
And if you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question.
Yeah.
Visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us. But please be sure to still email the question to Barliman, though.
Mm-hmm. Now, even though Barliman's been a lot more reliable lately, there is still a lot of mail to sort through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able. As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend amongst such excellent and admirable listeners and co-hosts. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.